Hi, I'm Dr. Chad Larson. I want to connect a few dots for you today with regard to your immune system and your general health, especially as it pertains to your metabolic health, which we've talked about many times, and which basically include things like the health of your blood sugar metabolism, your blood pressure, and overall cardiovascular wellness and fitness, and also things like your triglycerides, your body weight, and your waist circumference. These kind of things come together and make up your metabolic health. So if you have certain criteria of these symptoms, then you could actually be diagnosed with something called metabolic syndrome, which puts a person at a really significant increased chance of developing things like diabetes and obesity and heart disease. And we now know with the whole COVID-19 statistics that the vast majority of those who had hospitalization from COVID had at least one of these conditions. And we know from recent literature that I've talked about a few times that only 12.2% of US adults are metabolically healthy. That means 87+% of the US population of adults are metabolically unhealthy and at major, risk factor for these conditions. And remember, these statistics include like 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds, and 30-year-olds. So they probably really help to skew those statistics to where if we didn't include them, those stats would likely be much, much worse, unfortunately. So I just want to connect a few dots in this regard. We know that metabolic syndrome or metabolic health puts even your immune system at a significant risk factor. And so it makes us think about things like your micronutrients. Micronutrients are things like magnesium and zinc and vitamin D. All these nutrients, B vitamins, vitamin C, all these nutrients you've heard of. And there is actually an established RDA, recommended daily allowance, or RDI, recommended daily intake. It's because these nutrients have a very well established symptom profile if they become deficient. Like, for example, people have heard of scurvy. Scurvy is vitamin C deficiency. There's some other common, well-known ones like beriberi. They're not common, but they're well-known, let's say it that way. Beriberi is a condition from vitamin B1 deficiency. There's pellagra, which is a vitamin B3 deficiency. Rickets, which is a vitamin D deficiency. So these were easy to create an RDA, RDI for because they had a really, really clear symptom profile if they were deficient. And so it was easy to come up with a certain degree of these nutrients that needed to be consumed on a regular basis to avoid deficiency. However, when they came up with these guidelines, they really missed out on something very, very significant, I think. And that's the recommended daily intake of something that we call phytonutrients. Phytonutrients are not as well known. Their sort of acute deficiency signs and symptoms are not as well understood. There's not like a name like scurvy that goes along with deficiency or insufficiency of these phytonutrients. But we do know that in populations where there's a significant deficiency or lack of phytonutrient consumption, that oftentimes chronic illness like metabolic syndrome or metabolic illness is something that often plagues these cultures and these groups of people who have low consumption of these nutrients. So what are phytonutrients? Phytonutrients are basically just nutrients found in plants. Phyto means plant, plant nutrients. And they're not as well known. Like maybe you haven't heard of carotenoids and glucosinolates and sulforaphane and indole-3-carbinol. These are nutrients that are very rich in vegetables. Vegetables like the cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cabbage and kale and Brussels sprouts and leafy greens are just a multi-nutrient of all these phytonutrients. They're all over in these nutrients, but unfortunately, these nutrients are not being consumed at the degree that really historically, ancestrally, that we consume these. when we look at more indigenous kind of cultures, they have such a rich variety of these phytonutrients just in their standard daily diet. And we don't have that, unfortunately, in our culture. So it's an unfortunate thing that it hasn't, we and scientists, nutrient and food scientists, have not come up with a set of kind of minimal amounts of these phytonutrients that we can be consuming. But looking at even just American culture, these nutrients are very, very deficient. And if you kind of overlay that with our metabolic health, which, remember, on the most optimistic side, we only have about 12.2% of metabolic health of adults in the US. And if we overlay that with the amount of phytonutrient non-consumption, then there seems to be a pretty significant correlation. So it's really key to get these broad variety of nutrients in your diet on a daily basis. And a lot of people just aren't consuming these foods, which kind of leads me to something that I recommend to patients frequently, something that I consume on a regular basis. I still have a diet that is probably better than average in the US for consumption of vegetables that are pretty broad variety where I'm getting these phytonutrients, but I still consume things on a regular basis that have these in sort of supplementation form, like this one. This is a super berry superfood drink that I consume regularly, and there's like 40 something plus ingredients on here. I mean, how often are you getting, European elder fruit and organic amaranth sprouting seed and buckwheat sprouting seed and adzuki bean sprouts and things like, highly concentrated and nutrient dense kale and blueberry. These things are just not in people's everyday diet, but each of those things that I just named are loaded with these phytonutrients. Here's another one that I kind of switched from. This is a kind of a lemony mint green strength from the same company. And again, there's 40, 50 ingredients in here of all these foods that are just not being consumed on a regular basis. Flaxseed and chickpea bean sprouts and quinoa sprouting seeds and these different tubers and parsley leaf and things that are just not really being consumed on a regular basis. But the idea is to have a broad variety of these nutrients, and each of these nutrients kind of working together. It's like 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, 1 + 1 = 5 or 10. They kind of potentiate one another, and these phytonutrients, we're designed to have them. The way that our liver works, we very clearly developed over probably thousands of generations an ability and a necessity for consuming these nutrients in our body, in our liver, our gastrointestinal tract. All the cells in our body could use these nutrients at a level that unfortunately is being missed by most. So this is a really great, simple, and very delicious way of ensuring that you're getting in these really, really important phytonutrients, because I think it's a deficiency or an insufficiency of these phytonutrients that I think is contributing, that's correlating to a lot of the chronic illness that we're dealing with today. So enjoy your phytonutrients. Use one of these New Greens products as a way to ensure that you're getting these things on a daily basis, and I think you'll enjoy it, and you'll be doing something really, really key for your body that I think not enough people are really talking about, this insufficiency or deficiency of these really, really key phytonutrients. So hopefully that's helpful to your health, and I'll keep reading the studies, bringing you the information. Until then, keep it real.